Welcome along, one and all, to round 7 of PSGL Season 39 PSF3, brought to you by GT Omega. This relentlessly dramatic season is now approaching its endgame. Two incredible talents define the last race in Silverstone, pull clear in the standings, but can anyone else join Zinedine Hajjaj and EVE PLX in our PSF3 title fight as we near the final couple of rounds? That is all to come later on here at Marina Bay Circuit. It is the Singapore Grand Prix. That is what we're going to be treated to here tonight. To take you through the action here tonight, it is your usual PSF3 commentary lineup of myself, Zaka, and alongside me, as always, is my good friend Ghost. How are you tonight, sir?
Doing well. Yeah, we've really got in prospect a fantastic end to this season. We do have our top two in the championship here tonight, which is always good to see, as well as others further down, including Nico in that V-Carb, who needs a break. He does, doesn't he? He needs something to go his way, because I think he is undeservedly 22 points down on that championship lead right now. But at the end of the day, it's the points that count, and Zinedine Hajjaj just 8 points ahead of PLX heading into this one. Just 3 rounds to go, including today. So it's looking like those two are our main contenders, but this is Singapore, and like you were saying to me before the stream started, Daka, anything can happen around here. You usually almost always get a chaotic race around here, and I'm sure it'll be no different today.
I'm sure it'll be no different as well. We will see how we will get kicked off, though, with this qualifying session. Onto the track is the kick-server first of Lars van der Linden. He is heading around at turn number 5, punching out of that and opening up that DRS, getting onto the overtake button. Sector times here, you're looking at about a mid to high 25, a 25.9 for Lars. He locks up going into turn 7 at the old memorial there, breaking down, and a turn 8 rear locking too. So not very stable on that brake pedal, trying to keep that car under control as he heads around turn 9 nice and clean, and heading up towards the Singapore sling. The amount of curb you have to take here is phenomenal if you want to have world-class speed. Hopping over those curves, we head over the Anderson Bridge onto the brakes, down into turn number 13, running very deep, it has to be said, straightening up that car. DRS once again as it's a short burst down towards turn number 14, hard on the brakes, 102.3 for the first 2 sectors. Try and straighten out that exit as much as you can, as then you head down towards, of course, the track modified in the last couple of years. You don't get DRS here in the game, bizarrely enough, but then you head around the final couple of corners right up towards the wall, heading out of turn number 17, then 18 and 19, but he elects not to do that because that was, to be honest, a very scruffy lap.
Indeed it was. It looks like PLX then is going to be the first to set a lap time as Nico is invalidated. So here comes the man in P2 in the championship, a 25.774. That's instantly, it's way faster than Nick and Felix, who go straight after. Spyros within 2/10, but still not really anywhere near. NASCAR, Ruben file in 4 and 5. Seed goes to P2, but still no one within 2/10. Where is Zinedine Hajjaj? He's coming across the line now. He's only within 100th of a second. The top two in the championship right together yet again in today's qualifying session so far, and but it's PLX this time who draws first blood. Can anyone else improve on that? Mathieu, who's also been very fast this season, goes to P3, just a 10th behind the Aston Martin driver, as Zviadek in the other Mercedes is coming through the final sector at the moment, so we'll see what he can do. Vessel's just behind him, and then after that it's just people on in-laps.
Oh, PLX!
PLX retired! He's binned it at the hairpin! I think he's locked the rears on his in-lap. It's a disaster for PLX. Zviadek goes to P8, but that is such an absolute shock in this qualifying session. I don't think anyone would have expected that. I can only imagine that he would have locked the rears into the hairpin, Daka.
Yeah, I can only see that being the case, and on the in-lap too, extraordinary. And well, I was already gearing up for another incredible qualifying battle between PLX and Zinedine, like we saw last time out in Silverstone. But oh my goodness, and how significant can that prove to be? A 25.7 is of course a very fast lap by any means, and especially for a banker lap, but I can't imagine that that's going to be anywhere near the front of the grid when the session is all said and done. So we'll see what happens, but that could be an immensely costly mistake for EVE-PLX, and it must be said, completely needless too, on a lap where he was just trying to bring it back in, nothing being at stake. So that, we will see if it does indeed prove to be the hammer blow, which I may think it proved to be. Of course, he last time out in Silverstone, he came back through the field after a disconnection. He's capable of moving through the field. We saw it in Austria too, but that has the potential to be very costly, and wow, what a shot, Ghost.
Yeah, absolutely. Out of nowhere, that was. We were concentrating on other people's laps. Vessel went to P12, by the way, during all of that. But yeah, just out of nowhere, on an in-lap, just a lapse of concentration from our current provisional pole sitter. And, well, it's a golden opportunity for Zinedine Hajjaj now to get himself onto pole position. And, well, if that lap time gets beaten by a few other people, and you just look at those times, I mean, all of the top 6 are within 3/10, and around this circuit, you know, if it was Austria or Imola or Italy, somewhere like that, you'd think, well, you know, 3/10, that's going to be tricky. I don't think anyone who's more than 2/10 away has got a huge chance of beating that lap from PLX. But this is Singapore, Dakar. You can improve at so many places on this circuit. You just get a little bit of a better line through one corner and you're immediately up half a tenth. And then you just have to do that a few more times. And obviously banker laps, drivers are going to be a bit safer in general. So yeah, that's looking like a very vulnerable lap time from PLX. It might be quick, but how quick is it going to be come the end of this session is the question. He is going to be absolutely gutted and so frustrated with himself for that mistake. Like you said, so unnecessary, and how costly is it going to be?
We shall see, and I think you make a great point too about banker laps then. At this track, which we've already seen how hard it can bite if you get it even just a little bit wrong. Drivers will be holding more back here on the banker laps and others. They're now going to get going though as they get into full flight as OVR Nico takes more than 2/10 out of that time from PLX. That is immediately into the mid-25s. I was speaking to some of the drivers before the race about what they thought the pole time could be. I thought it was going to be a mid-25 and the drivers were saying no, it's going to be faster, and well, certainly it does seem to be going that way as Nico goes well clear. Gippo over the line nearly a full second slower on a 26.4. But yeah, OVR Nico, you said he does need a little bit of fortune. It looked for a while as if he may even win in the last race in Silverstone, and a number of races that have fallen away from him since that race victory he took back at round 3 in Spa. But that is a very, very intimidating lap for the rest of the field, and you'd have to imagine that he's got more in the tank too for later on in the session. So we've talked about how much people could improve and how vulnerable that time from EVE-PLX too. Of course, Nico is a classy driver, but I think there's a number of other drivers that are capable. But nevertheless, OVR Nico setting his stall out and trying to claw his way back into that championship fight tonight.
Absolutely, yeah. He needs a big result tonight. He needs some misfortune for PLX and Zinedine Hajjaj. Ruben also out in Sector 2 by the looks of things. That's a kind of strange place to bin it. That's where George Russell binned it a few years ago. So not quite sure what Ruben's done there, but yeah, like I was saying, Nico needs a mistake from Zinedine Hajjaj today, and preferably also PLX, but especially the championship leader. He needs to have a poor outing tonight. But Zinedine Hajjaj has other plans as he comes to the hairpin of turn 13 and down the DRS straight towards the sector line. What's it going to be? It's just under a tenth up, so he's nowhere near Nico's time. Very wide at turn 14, but gets away with it. It was just about perfect actually on track, but yeah, it looks like he'll beat PLX, but he's going to need a lot more than that to beat Nico. That was Sieb coming across the line for P4 in the meantime, but here comes the championship leader. He's run out of ERS through the final corner and to the line. It's a 25.6, just half a tenth away from Nico's time. And that time from PLX, I think Dakar is going to be looking very, very vulnerable as we head into the last 8 minutes of this quali session.
The two drivers closest to him in the championship standings, the two drivers faster at the moment. in the session thus far, 1 and 2, ahead of EVE PLX. Of course, the man currently second in the standings, the PSF4 champion. One thing I was going to mention, and we've already seen PLX and Ruben, we didn't see the nature of either of those crashes, but some of the walls here are particularly punishing. I feel like even if you graze them, you can rip off your front or your left front or right front tire. I've seen it happen in a number of league races in separate leagues around this game. Of course, we haven't visited this track in PSGL yet on this game cycle, but yeah, some of those walls are incredibly punishing, and you can't even go near them. And even in qualifying, I think that's something that's very threatening. Of course, I don't know if that's been the case as to why PLX and Ruben have suffered their demise in this session, but I think it could be a factor as EVE Mathieu's comes to the line, and there's another driver to go in front of EVE PLX on a 1:25.6, some 700 shy of Zinedine Hajjaj, and it's all drivers who are up there in the standings, also up there in this session. So Mathieu getting up there, PLX now down to 4th, number of drivers still circulating. It's such a difficult track to hook that lap up, but more and more drivers are coming through, but you can see how big the gaps are compared to what we're used to seeing in PSF3. There's certainly a lot of drivers that haven't got it all hooked up just yet.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're talking about walls that are difficult to hit. Watch for the exit of turn 8 today, because that could cause an upset or two, because that curb on the outside, on the exit of that corner, if you so much as graze it, your tyre will just explode off your car. So the drivers, I'm sure, will be aware of that, and they will make sure that they do avoid that curb. But, you know, one lapse of concentration and suddenly it is all over for your race. So do watch for there. I have seen PLX has posted footage of his crash into the paddock Discord, and it's not what we thought, Daka. He did not lock the rears at all. It was just a total lapse in concentration. It was the wall coming towards the corner on the right hand side that just juts out a little bit. He just smashed straight into it with his front right tire. He just was not paying attention. So that is a shocking DNF from quali for PLX, and well, how much is it going to cost him? He's in fact left the session. Hopefully, well, I mean, he'll be able to get back in anyway because we restart the lobby, but that is, yeah, very, very costly for PLX potentially, and it just goes to show, no matter what, especially if you're in a championship fight, it doesn't matter if it's qualifying or a race, especially on a circuit like this as well, you have to be concentrating all the time, whether you're in a battle, whether you're on a hot lap, or if you're just on an in lap or driving around on your own.
Yep, this track so punishing, and the pressure is at an all-time high here as we get towards the last few rounds of the season. Could be punishing, but he is still 4th in the session. I think he'd take that. OVR Nico was on a lap, was about 700s down to the first 2 sectors, and it was his last sector on his fastest lap up to this point that was the most sensational, as ASRT Geppo goes over the line, gets into the 125s on a 25.7. That was Mattia Manga going up into 3rd place, and now it is the top 5 in the standings, the top 5 in the session. Sam van Marsing also improves the P8, so more and more drivers are starting to find their rhythm, find their groove out there. NLR Felix 1 comes over the line, that is P11, and behind OVR NASCAR is actually very close to the pace that was set by the leaders in the session, and goes up into 5th place himself, a 1:25.694, just 6 thousandths of a second shy of the time of Mathieu. So times coming in a bit more frequently now. We are into the final 4 minutes of the session. Nico's time still on top. They haven't got down into the low 25s that the drivers were predicting for a pole time, so there's still more time in the circuit, but they are finding it, and I think we'll see a very, very explosive end to the session. Well, hopefully not literally, but we should see a number of drivers going out then and finding big improvements, because as you said, there's so many places on this track to find that improvement, and I'm sure every driver has something more to gain in these last 3 minutes.
Yeah, very impressive time that for OVR NASCAR, and he'll be happy to be ahead of PLX, because I think that's basically going to be the target for drivers who are capable of beating that time. It is just to beat that time, because you know, PLX is obviously going to be fighting towards the front in this race. He's clearly got pace. I'm sure he could have improved on that by several tenths if he'd had the opportunity to do so. So the drivers here, they've got a target now. Sam van Marsing also improved up to P9, but he's a little lower down than we usually expect him to be. And after it looked like initially that the gaps were going to be a lot larger around this track than on most other tracks that we've seen PSF3 this season, they have come well and truly back down again in these last few minutes. But still, Nappel and Lars van der Linden yet to set a time. Nappel's gone out in the mediums, so he's not going to be challenging the front runners for those qualifying times. But yeah, interesting couple of minutes ahead. Last few laps for the drivers. I wonder, is anyone going to save a set of softs, or are they all going to head out?
Well, we shall see, but I think it's looking like the latter at the moment, as there's a whole gaggle of cars just exiting that pit lane. But we'll see. There's still a number of drivers still in the pits. Lars van der Linde just started his lap. I've been watching him quite a lot throughout this session, and every lap he has done up to this point, as has to be said, been riddled with mistakes, and that has led to this very pressure-filled final lap. We'll see how he gets on. Nappel just behind on the track again. Another big pressure lap for the Ferrari driver. Needs a big one here, with of course nothing on the board as of yet. Lars van der Linde does a 25.8 in the first sector. That's solid enough, but we'll see how that compares. Of course, we'll be tracking Nappel as well. Those two are some way ahead of everyone else in their progress on these final runs. 1:15 left in the session. It looks like the Alpines are going to be sitting in the pit lane. Well, one of them is headed out, Felix, but he has nowhere near enough time to actually get it done out there, as Lars is being put off a little bit by his teammate Spyros, who's in front of him on an out lap. He won't be too happy with that as he straightens up the car, heading out of turn number 13. We'll see what the second sector time is going to be. It's a 101.6, which is very solid, and I think only about a tenth and a bit slower than what Nico was up to this point in the lap. Of course, Nico's last sector time was sensational, but we shall see what Lars van der Linden can muster up as he heads down towards the end of the lap at turns 16 and 17. Gets right up against that outside wall again. He's had to navigate a lot of cars. There's no collisions, but it would have been a distraction. Nevertheless, he comes up to the line, and that's a very good lap under pressure from Lars van der Linden. A 1:25.7. That will come as a major relief.
Exceptional pressure lap that. From Lars van der Linden. It's so hard to hook up a lap after you've invalidated all your previous ones, or they just haven't gone to plan, especially when you don't have a delta to work off. If you don't have that green delta on the screen, it's, you know, the green color in the top right of your vision can be a motivator on circuit when you're doing qualifying laps. So yeah, very impressive that from Lars van der Linden. Nappel comes across, well, he sets a time, but it's obviously nothing to write home about, as Nico comes through turn 13 in the hairpin. Our current provisional pole sitter, Zinedine Hajjaj, a few corners behind him, but Nico coming to the sector line now. He's half a tenth down, so he's struggling to improve, and we saw that final sector was so strong from him earlier on. Mateusz has invalidated. Zinedine Hajjaj comes to the sector line. He's 2.5 tenths up, Daka.
Wow.
And the championship leader is looking to put a stranglehold on pole position. Nico coming through the last corner now, using everything he's got in the ERS. He improves by a little bit, but Zinedine Hajjaj, if he can just hook up these last few corners, should be able to take that pole back. Mattia Manga, I don't know if he's improving, but here comes the championship leader. What's it going to be? A 25.2 from Hajjaj. Mattia Manga's only half a tenth up. He's nowhere near that time from Zinedine Hajjaj. Sieb goes to P3. Can Mattia Manga take that position back through the final corner? Comes the Red Bull. No, he stays P4, and it looks like an emphatic pole position for the championship leader. And look where PLX has ended up, Daka. He's all the way down. I think he was P10 in the end, or P11, so he has got a lot of work to do, and he will have his head in his hands watching that pole position from the championship leader.
He looked like he had so much left in the tank, and I think a lot of drivers did, but Zinedine Hajjaj at 25.2, that is phenomenal. And he beats out OVR Nico by the tune of more than 2/10 of a second. RTC, great late lap to go third, ahead of Mattia Manga, who joins him on that second row. Mateusz and NASCAR come next, and then Lars van der Linden, Zweiding, PLX P9, so he's still got a base to work up ahead of the race, but he's got some work to do. Of course, Spyros joins him on that fifth row. Outside of that is Geppo, Sam van Marsing, Felix, Nick, Vessel, and Ruben. round out the grid ahead of the race. I don't think I got everyone, so just a quick look, just a quick double check. Um, I believe behind that would have been Napple, of course, with really not being able to get a competitive lap in at all throughout the course of the session. So now we look forward to the Grand Prix itself just a little bit later on. And Zinedine Hajjaj, well, it's set. I'm sure it will say pole position by PSF3 standards, a very big margin of just over 2/10 of a second, an incredible lap time. But I think the defining trait of that is that, I mean, I was watching Nico's lap, who of course came joining on that front row. It was a very scruffy lap. There are a number of mistakes, including at the Singapore sling, and I think that is probably what a lot of drivers will be feeling. Of course, it's almost unrealistic to expect them to be hooking up laps at Singapore without errors. Of course, we've spoken at length about how difficult this track is, but I think that is what that gap can be attributed to. It was just obviously he has incredible raw speed, but I think more than anything, he just put together the cleanest lap out of everyone and overall just had the cleanest session.
Yeah, absolutely. And, well, Nico, I don't know that much French, but I know enough to know what he said in the paddock there. He said, "You are annoying, stop it." So, yeah, that's... I think sums up the other drivers' feelings towards Zinedine Hajjaj's results this season. And, well, he is in prime position now to extend that championship lead, or at the very least extend it to PLX. Even if Nico beats him in the end, I think PLX is such a long way behind on the grid. He's going to have a lot of trouble on this circuit catching back up. And he'll probably have to go for some aggressive moves, which might not end well. So we'll have to keep a close eye on PLX's progress. But yeah, Hajjaj is in a very comfortable position. He'll be very happy with this quali session and the positions of his rivals. And well, it's his to lose at the moment. But like Daka said, there's an awful lot of variables that go into a quali lap around Singapore, and race pace could be very different.
It could be very different. Of course, Zinedine Hajjaj is generally not lacked for quali or race pace, and that, in fact, now his third pole position of the season. So incredible one-lap speed. We'll see how that translates over to the Grand Prix. That will come very, very soon, of course. So we're just looking forward towards that. But yes, he'll certainly be thinking he's got a great opportunity on his hands ahead of the race, just qualifying ahead of OVR Nico on that front row. Now, about PLX, we have talked about him a lot, but I think it's justified given the narrative behind his session. He starts this race from P9. He was, of course, started lower on the grid when he won in Austria. He came back through the field after disconnection to win at Silverstone. Those are the last two rounds. If any driver on this grid can pull off a comeback from there, I think it is EVE PLX, because that man's racecraft is exceptional, and his decision making in races, Chinese Grand Prix aside, has generally been right on. So I certainly wouldn't write him off. There could very much be opportunities for him further down the road.
Yeah, and don't forget the way this season has gone so far. We're probably, if we look at the odds, we're probably going to look at some rain at some point in this race. And that's going to spice things up as well if that does end up happening. But yeah, PLX, I think, will especially be hoping for that, because Hajjaj has looked somewhat vulnerable in wet weather this season. As soon as it's dried up again, he's been right on the pace again, but at times he has looked vulnerable in the wet. So yeah, I think his rival's certainly hoping for a bit more rain to hit the streets of Singapore tonight, but it really is an uphill battle for PLX. But you're absolutely right. If there's any driver who can make their way through the grid without wrecking themselves, it is probably going to be PLX. And to be honest, I'd put money on Hajjaj doing it as well if their roles were reversed from that quali session. So yeah, it could easily go either way for PLX, but he's going to be a man on a mission. And we're at the point in the season now where there's going to be a bit of just a tiny feeling in at least some drivers' minds of oh, I don't want to take out the guy that's fighting for the championship. So that may or may not make PLX's life a little bit easier. But having said that, all of these drivers are incredibly strong drivers, and in the end, their race instincts may well easily easily quash that line of thinking. So we'll have to see.
And well, that's certainly been a theme throughout this season that we've discussed a lot. Is just the general aggression level of this grid. It is turned right up for a lot of these guys. They just like to go at it out on track, not even thinking about the race situation or but I would imagine not the championship situation quite so much. Of course, that will be playing on the minds of the likes of Zinedine Hajjaj and EVE PLX and even Nico at this point in the season. But yeah, I think for the rest of the drivers, I don't think they are going to be relenting much. I think PLX is going to have to fight tooth and nail to make up those places. Of course, we've seen certainly just from that banker lap, he does have a lot of raw speed around this track. It's whether he'll be able to use it locked up in the pack. That is to come later on. Of course, championship dynamics already coming into play. We are inside the final 3 rounds of this season. More to come later on, but while we have a bit of downtime, a quick word for our sponsor, GT Omega. A link to their site, of course, as always, is down in the video description down below, and if you have a notion to purchase anything from their site, you can use the code PSGL at checkout for a 5% discount on all GT Omega products. Just looking back to the qualifying session and what's being said in the paddock, we are, which is what I said at the beginning of the session, I think we've lost one driver as we're down to 16 briefly. Oh, now we're back up to 17, so false alarm then in the lobby. But a couple of comments, drivers that would have wanted more. Evie Mateos said he invalidated 25.3, which would have put him comfortably second on the grid. The two Alpines, we noted they headed out of the pits far too late to ever have a chance of getting a final lap in. They kind of got in each other's way in the pit lane, which is why they weren't able to get out in any sort of short order. So that's why you saw those drivers not able to get final runs in. So a lot of drivers will be ruining missed opportunities in that session, and I think that opens the door for a lot of moving and shaking throughout the race, especially, of course, if we do get treated to rain again. But that is to come. Singapore races, as we were saying before we got live Ghost, Singapore races in league racing tend to be just chaotic at the highest level. It is just bonkers around this track.
Yeah, absolutely. I struggle to remember the last boring Singapore race I've been a part of, whether commentating or racing. So yeah, it's certainly a circuit that can throw up some unexpected twists, particularly in these kinds of championship scenarios late in a season. So, Hajjaj in a very good position right now, and PLX with it all to do. But it's Singapore. Everything can change in the blink of an eye. And, you can't count your chickens on this track at all. So it's going to be playing on the minds of those drivers. I'm sure Zinedine Hajjaj will be feeling comfortable, but also hoping that nothing goes horribly wrong.
And another thing that I wanted to mention ahead of this race, we were talking about the PSF2 race just before this, which has turned out to be wet weather, intermediate conditions the whole race. This race is long in terms of race time, so that certainly plays a role here. 31 laps of Singapore. Just the endurance level that you need to have, not least for us commentators, lest we forget, but certainly for these drivers as well. This track, and we hear it from the real life drivers all the time, how much of a physical and mental test it is. The concentration, especially the track with such a small margin for error. These guys are going to be out there for such a long time, especially if, of course, if it does turn out to be wet. But yeah, the level of endurance, I think, has to come into play, and your ability to focus, I think, which isn't something we bring up very often, but I think it's very relevant here at Singapore.
Yeah, certainly is, and you've got to be switched on the whole race. I mean, we've seen this, we've seen that in qualifying already. Just a couple of drivers not switched on, even on in laps, and suddenly it's all over in an instant. They've got to be wary of those curbs and those walls that jut out at certain places, particularly turn 8, like I said. But yeah, you're spot on, Daka. It's a grueling test of endurance, this circuit. Not, I don't think, quite on par with Monaco for that particular title, but it's right up there. It's probably the number 2 track worthy of that particular title on the calendar. So yeah, it's tricky to keep your focus the whole way through because you've got to be so switched on, and we'll see which drivers just have a lapse of that concentration at a moment, because it can all go so wrong in an instant.
As it may have done for Sam Van Marsing just then. Hopefully,
Yes.
he can get back in very quickly before we get the race underway, which, well, you'd expect to be in just a few seconds' time. Of course, he didn't have the best of qualifying sessions, but a driver who's demonstrated so much throughout this season and been right up there in a lot of races, of course, with that second position in the Chinese Grand Prix, really sticking out there, and currently sits P8 in the standings. But we'll see how that plays out. Again, hopefully he can get back in control of the car. We haven't got going just yet, so we'll hold off on that one. Just a reminder, of course, it is your championship leader Zinedine Hajjaj at the front, as Sam Van Marsing's calling out a lobby glitch, which is a little bit of a concern, and we haven't got going yet. I don't know if this is a widespread issue in the lobby. Nico's just put out an invite, and it's looking at the moment as if we're not going to get the race underway in a matter of seconds. Looks like we have a bit. Well, we are going to get going at the very least as it stands, but I'm rather confused. I don't know if they get underway with Zinedine and Nico at the front of the grid, and we're going to see if they actually do decide to get going normally. Nico takes away the race lead from Zinedine Hajjaj, but well, Sam Van Marsing calling out a lobby issue. But I think we are actually getting going racing regardless. It is Nico leading the way from Zinedine Hajjaj with a great launch off the line again. Sorry for my confusion, but they are getting going here at Singapore. And Nico leads the way from Zinedine. They begin to tuck in, heading in towards turn 7. And looking to the inside there was Ivi Matiusz in the Mercedes towards the Red Bull of TRT, Mattia Manga. But behind, they all seem to be settling into a rhythm side by side for a couple of drivers heading out of turn number 8 then. As PLX tried to come back. He's already up 3 places off the start, and he looks to the inside, and Matiusz doesn't quite get through in the end, so he tucks in a P6, but a great start nevertheless for the Frenchman, moving up the order very, very nicely. Again, sorry for my confusion off the start, but it is Nico with a great launch up the inside of Zinedine Hajjaj. He leads the way, and all in all, a great first lap for PLX.
Yeah, absolutely. What a first lap it was. He's going down the inside of Matiusz. Absolutely sends it. That could have gone horribly wrong. He just about gets away with it. But he is a man on a mission, like we said. Sieb already struggling to stay with the top 2, so PLX will be in a lot of trouble if he does lose that DRS train. And at the moment, Sieb already out of that 1 second range. So Nico and Hajjaj threatening to run away with this race already. But PLX will definitely be doing everything he can to stop that from happening. It does look like we're underway. I don't think there's any restart or anything happening, as Nick and Felix having a battle vessel there as well, nearly 3 wide through turn 3, but they all just about get away with it. I think there was a bit of damage. I think that was IRT Nick. Yeah, no front left end plate actually for the Williams driver, but it's Nico who leads from Zinedine Hajjaj. Sieb just about staying in range, but for how long? He doesn't seem to quite have the race pace of those top 2, as PLX is desperately trying to look for a way through a Matiusz, but the Mercedes driver not making it easy at all. It has been hard tyres for most of the drivers to start the race, but interestingly, our top 3 championship contenders all starting on the mediums: Nico, Zinedine Hajjaj and PLX. And that also could explain why they built such a gap early on, those top 2 being on the mediums as opposed to the hards. So we'll see how that strategy shakes out later on in the Grand Prix.
The gap just over a second from Zinedine to Sieb. That is the one we've got to be looking out for. Sieb is working very, very hard. He's drained his battery, but he doesn't, at the moment, have DRS in that range. He's going to come out of this last couple of corners. That's a detection point right there, and he's 1.1 behind. So this is a chance for Nico and Zinedine to pull clear and really take advantage of those medium tires and the grip they provided this early point of the race. PLX also, of course, on those mediums will be trying desperately to move his way up, but the Mercedes VV Mateusz proving to be very stubborn in front of him, and at the moment PLX cannot quite find a way through at the moment, and he's worried about gaps opening up himself. Mattia Manga is even struggling to hold on to Sieb, but Sieb is now dragging these guys along. He's out of range entirely. Zinedine tucks in
PLX
behind the race leader as PLX to the inside of turn 7. Mateusz very late on the brakes and chops across the nose of the Aston Martin, who tries to fight on around the outside of turn 8, right next to that treacherous curb on the outside. He manages to hang on to it late into turn 9, who carries a ton of entrance speed and goes side by side with Mateusz and gets in front. That was tremendously brave from EVE PLX and says everything about his intentions here tonight. He gets the way through on a car that did not want to yield. He is up into 5th place, very aggressive on the brakes too, into turn number 13. PLX is on a mission. That was ballsy, and in the end it paid off. He's on his way. He's got a gap to bridge to Mattia Manga up in front, but wow, that is why he is in this championship fight. That was an incredible bit of wheel-to-wheel racing.
Oh, wow, I thought it was all over. I thought he was going straight into that wall. No way did I think he would hang it around the outside there, but he did. And all credit to Mateusz as well. He made it so hard for PLX, but he never squeezed him out. He always left just enough room for PLX to get his car into, and PLX just had the bravery to take it. I think Mateusz just kind of figured that PLX would have to back out at some point, but he never did. He just sent his car through every gap, and he got his way through. So all credit to both of them. That was absolutely incredible to watch from both drivers. And PLX now with the DRS, but not close enough to make a move, I don't think, into turn 7. No, indeed, has to stay behind. And PLX 1.5 seconds behind Mattia Manga. That is the gap that he wants to close down. He's got the better tyres, but it's still going to be a real struggle for him. We don't quite yet know what his race pace is going to be like in this race compared to the others. But we're just assuming he's going to be fast. He's already caught another couple of tenths, and that was an incredible line there through turn 11. But it's still not close enough for the DRS. 1.1 seconds, and that is about where he was at this point in the last lap as well. So that DRS means he's struggling.
Well, Mattia Manga has gone a lot closer to Sieb. That DRS has pulled him right into play. PLX, of course, had a mistake heading into turn 16 on the last lap. So that explains the gap not quite coming down as quickly as he would have wanted, but now he's working his way back inside as Zinedine Hajjaj, actually, he's made an error, I assume, at turn 16-17, and he's dropped completely out of that DRS range. Joviar Nico, who stretched the field out with a phenomenal first lap, is now going to try and tighten the screw around Zinedine Hajjaj, tighten that noose, and we'll see. He's 1.1 ahead. Zinedine, of course, burning all of his battery. Both these guys are very low in that regard. Zinedine into the wall out of turn 5. He is pushing to the absolute limit and taking huge risks to try and hang on in there. The cap still 1.1 seconds, and this could be very crucial these next couple of laps. Very rare to see on this game. Two drivers running out of DRS range now. It is a battle of sheer all-out pace between the two drivers who have been the class of the field so far tonight. Nico leads Zinedine, and that gap holding very steady. They are both, I guarantee you, at their limit. And these kind of fights can be even more intense sometimes than when drivers are running in a DRS strike, because you know these guys are both absolutely going all out and leaving nothing to chance out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And, well, usually in these sorts of situations this season, you just kind of expect Zinedine Hajjaj to regain that DRS gap if he does lose it. But today, that mistake through 16 and 17, you identified it correctly. He just clattered over the curb, I think, at 16, and gave himself a horrible line for 17. But he looks a little more vulnerable today than he usually does, Hajjaj, in the dry conditions. So 1.3 is now the gap. PLX is in DRS range, but he's got nothing left in the battery. Mattia Manga's got plenty left. just ahead. So PLX, he's still got to work hard, but that terrible line from the Red Bull ahead through turn 1 and 2 is really going to help the Aston Martin. He's within 8 tenths. He's going to feel a bit more comfortable with that gap. He did have DRS down to turn 7 on the previous lap as well, but he lost it later in the lap, so thanks to not having any ERS left. So he's got to nail this middle sector now, PLX.
Behind OVR NASCAR moves past Lars van der Linden. These guys have been gapped fairly substantially from the drivers in front. There's two guys on soft tyres behind Spyros and Ruben, who's made a great start from the back of the field, but now falling out of range of the drivers in front and does have damage as well on that right-hand side end plate, has Videk all over him. I think the delta between the medium and the hards is already beginning to equalise, and Seb is actually coming back towards the top two a little bit, or Zinedine at least, who's having a very scruffy lap. I think he's decided to try and save some battery, realising that he couldn't match Nico or get back into that DRS range and make up for that mistake. But now he's dropping back towards that group behind, and OVR Nico, his pace looks absolutely golden at the moment. He's managed to keep it relatively error-free too. Of course, we're still so early in the Grand Prix, but he is pulling clear out there, and dare I say, it looks like there's no one that can match him. We're still very early in the race, but OVR Nico looks sublime right now.
He really does, and well, he's 22 points behind going into this race. He needed a big result, and well, getting a race win, there's no bigger result than that. But crucially, he also needs really Hajjaj to have a poor race. And at the moment, he's sitting very nicely in P2. Seb has fallen back a few tenths again on that previous, or towards the end of that previous lap. So we'll see if he can claw back that advantage. But Nico in a great position right now in terms of his championship chances, but he needs more misfortune for the cars behind us. Gippo goes for a late lunge on Ruben further back. Pushes the Ferrari off nearly, but Ruben does have front wing damage, so that might explain that do or die move from ASRT Gippo, who's shown some fantastic pace and racecraft this season. Felix now to the inside of the Ferrari. There's side by side through again. Ruben goes wide, and that damage just proving too much for him. But yeah, Gippo finds himself quite a way down the grid. We're used to seeing him at least in the top 10 this season, but not today. He seems to be a bit struggling. He struggled a bit in quali as well, so work to do for Gippo.
Work to do at the moment. He's kind of stuck in this train really from 7th downwards. They got distanced fairly comprehensively off the start. NASCAR and Lars van der Linden have traded that 7th position a couple of times, and the rest of the train have really just been navigating their way around the stricken Ferrari of OVR Ruben. But these guys unable to quite match the drivers in front, as Spyros, losing a couple of places, actually dives into the pit lane, which is earlier than I was expecting pit stops to come in this race. But the Kicksauber is into the pits again. I was expecting pit stops around about lap 11 or 12, but he comes in. It's going to be a set of the hard tyres, and he will try and extend those as long as physically possible. That's created a split in that particular train, and now Geppo is going to get a run on Zvideg, moves up another position into 9th place. They'll swap again as well further up the road now. Lars going up in front of OVR NASCAR. Those two now somewhat in their own race after the start. Behind, it has come back together. Again, the hard tyres are becoming better and better relative to the mediums, as Nick is out of the race, but that looks to be a retirement in the pit lane. So IRT next evening coming to a close, unfortunately for the Williams driver. But up at the front, Zinedine caught by IRT Seb, and Seb, after struggling immensely in the opening couple of laps, seems to be right back into play. He's got Mattia Manga right with him, but you're seeing that delta between the medium and the hard swing further in favour of the hard wall tyres, and the question is now, can Seb find his way through? If he has a good run and can potentially get past Zinedine, he may even be able to bridge across towards Nico. It's a long way to go still, and we're expecting pit stops to come soon from the medium runners, but the hard tyres certainly coming into play, and Seb dragging the rest back up towards Zinedine Hajjaj.
Yeah, even PLX seems to be, or at least on the previous lap, seemed to be struggling a bit more for pace on those medium tyres. So I think you're right. I think the Delta's coming back to the hards now, and they are starting to be the better tyre. So when are those medium runners going to pit? How long are they going to wait is the big question. Zinedine Hajjaj now just under 2 seconds behind OVR Nico, but with the pressure from behind, can Seb pile the pressure on the championship leader and perhaps think about making a move into one of these corners after a DRS zone, perhaps, particularly into turn 7 is where we're going to see the most overtakes today. And look how close the Williams is behind it. I think definitely those medium tyres starting to struggle, particularly through those medium speed corners. PLX losing time through there as well. So the hards coming into play, and Sieb is right behind this Haas and threatening to get past at any moment.
First penalty of the race there goes the way of Lars van der Linden, of course. As I was saying, qualifying, there's no DRS after this heading into turn number 16, so the opportunity for Sieb probably won't come on this lap as he's still far too far back from Zinedine Hajjaj. Hajjaj looks incredibly sketchy out there, having big oversteer moments out of a lot of the corners, and that's certainly setting him back throughout this race. Now 2.1 seconds adrift of Nico out front. Is further back. Geppo, Zidek and Felix swapping places there, but they look to be the same place as Zinedine Hajjaj comes in from the front of that train, so he's decided enough was enough on those tyres. The undercut could be very, very powerful here, but Zinedine comes in the earliest of the leading medium runners, and we'll see what the response is going to be from the rest. But I think if he can get a solid outlap in a good clean air, as Napple unfortunately out of the session, this lobby has been a bit more unstable, I think. So the Ferrari driver, again, hopefully he can get himself back in short order. Zinedine comes in, and we'll see how powerful that undercut's going to prove to be, but I think that is going to draw responses from Nico and PLX, surely, at the end of this lap.
You would think, yeah, I'd be surprised if neither of them came in. Hajjaj is in fully clear air as his teammate, meanwhile, gets passed by Zviadek for P8 at that turn 8, where we're going to see a lot of moves. Yeah, Hajjaj, clean air. He's got a lot of work to do, but he is on the right tyres now, and he'll be looking to go to the end on these, of course, but they will be, of course, a lap older than everyone else, or at least the likes of Nico and PLX. And, well, if those mediums are as bad in the second stint as they have been in this first stint, then the starting on them might be the better choice, and a VSC is going to be exactly what Zinedine Hajjaj did not want to see. Nico and PLX now, it's not going to be a free stop, it's not a full safety car, but it will be a drastically reduced impact pit stop. In comes Nico straight away to respond, PLX the same, and Mateusz also coming in on those hard tyres behind. Is that a two-stop strategy for Mateusz? It must be. You can't take the mediums 21 laps from here, surely. So yeah, it's perfect timing for Nico and PLX, and they're going to come out well in front of Zinedine Hajjaj, who is going to be so frustrated to see that.
Yeah, that's very bad for Zinedine Hajjaj, but equally so also for the hard starters. That puts them in an incredibly difficult position strategically, as Vessel is out of the race. That looks to be in the pit lane, though, and he immediately out of the session. So unfortunate for Vessel. But yeah, out of the pits, Nico and PLX, and really all the medium runners who had already come in, had been yet to come in, were the big winners out of that pit stop exchange. Nico and PLX now clearing away, and Zinedine Hajjaj emerges around about 6 seconds behind PLX. It's not race killing for Zinedine Hajjaj, but he really needs to stop hitting that wall out of turn 5. He's going to be back on his way, but yes, certainly a bit of a hammer blow to his chances in this race. And again, Nico and PLX are both in the pound seat here, as now that battle that we saw between Nico and Zinedine earlier on in the first stint after Zinedine's error at turn 16, now the same thing is being repeated with PLX now trying to bridge across and getting to that DRS of OVR Nico in front.
Yeah, absolutely. But, you know, we've watched this season all the way through, and we've seen Zinedine Hajjaj recover to excellent results from far worse positions than this. So he may be in a bad spot right now, but I think it would be a fool to bet against him to still at least get himself on the podium in this race. But PLX now in DRS range of Nico. He got a perfect little bit of DRS there from the AI car of Ruben. So that worked absolutely, of Napple. So is that Napple or is that Ruben? I'm not sure.
That's
Whichever
Napple,
one.
yeah.
One of the Ferraris. It was Napple. So perfect timing for him. As he is now in that 1 second range of the former race leader, and he will be looking to pile the pressure on. So PLX starting from 9th place, and well,
Oh,
oh no, it's a disaster. Sviatek has left the session as well. Definitely a more unstable lobby today. I hope PLX can get his way back in, but we saw this last week as well, Daka. He also disconnected briefly and joined back almost immediately, so it's exactly the same situation, but again it's just as costly as it was then, because he's now nearly 2 seconds behind, or over 2 seconds behind Nico, when he was just within DRS range, and Zinedine Hajjaj is going to be catching up as well. So just what PLX didn't want to see, but it's perfect for OVR Nico. He'll be very happy to see that.
He's back in control of his car now, but yeah, that cost him more than 2 seconds. He does actually have EV Mateusz very close behind him, and that could prove to actually to be very good news. Is he actually in control of the car? They're ghosted inside each other then as Mateusz pulls past Shirley with DRS. Oh no, he's just teleported back in front, so yeah. Definitely some major connection issues on the part of the Aston Martin. Hopefully that doesn't interfere much with the Grand Prix, more than it already has. Now Nico, though, stretches his lead even further to more than 3 seconds. What could be good for PLX is the presence of EV Mateusz behind on fresh mediums. He's going to have a lot of speed in these next couple of laps. So he's going to be very strong here, but the question is, of course, how quick is that going to equalise? We saw how quickly the the medium tyre, fell off in the first stint, as Sviatek does manage to get himself back in the session as well. So he hopefully be able to take control of his car as well, but gutting luck as well for the Mercedes driver, as same for Napple, as driver after driver continues to overtake his AI car. So race situation, it is OVR Nico in the net lead, still 6 drivers on the hard tyres who are staying out, and you have to say, Ghost, those guys will be equally gutted from the VSC, as Sviatek takes control of his car just after he gets passed up by OVR Nico. He'll certainly be happy he got past at that point, but these guys who started on the hards, the undercut was already going to be powerful enough, but now with the loss that they'd have suffered against the other drivers who started on the mediums who came in, that is going to set them back immensely. The likes of Sieg and Mattia Manga, who were coming back towards Nico too, towards those pit stops, they're going to be so far adrift when they decide to come in for that final pit stop, unless of course they get an even better timed VSC or safety car, because yeah, that gap's going to be far too substantial, I imagine, for any medium stint at the end to close down.
Yeah, and you can never bet against a well-timed safety car at this circuit, as PLX now gets past Matthew. Actually, I think he just lagged.
He jumped,
back behind him briefly, yeah. Yeah, he is now 3.5 seconds behind Nico and about 3.5 seconds ahead of Zinedine Hajjaj. So the top 3 in the championship, as that's big news, and Hajjaj spins as well. Half spin out of turn 2 and a 3-second time penalty for the championship leader, and the nerves are starting to set in late in the season for the Frenchman. He was in full control of this race, in full control of qualifying, and then immediately lost the race lead into turn 1, and ever since then he has seemed a little out of control of this race. He's been a little dicey through some corners. Again, a mistake through turn 8, just loses the rears as he turns in. So Zinedine Hajjaj really struggling at the moment. He's now a lot further behind PLX than he was, and PLX meanwhile, I think that's just lag. I think he'll probably teleport back in front, but Zinedine Hajjaj in a lot of trouble. That's another disconnect for PLX, and well, I mean, Zinedine Hajjaj, you need a bit of luck to be a champion, usually in motorsport. And, well, when things haven't gone his way this season, he has usually fought back, and he's usually gotten a result out of nothing from fantastic driving towards the ends of races. But today, I think a bit of luck might well be on his side.
I believe so too, an EV PLX. I have to say, even if he does get back into control of his car, his connection is simply far too unstable, I think, to be racing it there. He does get back in the session, but his car has been constantly jumping back and forth. It's been, I imagine, immensely irritating for Mateusz as well, who's been sat behind him, if he's seeing the same things that we're seeing with that car all over the shop. He is now, I imagine, going to take control of his car, same with Zinedine Hajjaj coming up towards him now, and yeah, PLX, I think, yeah, that connection just simply not good enough for this race. He is now going to get back in control, just getting overtaken by Zinedine Hajjaj. That gap that he had after Zinedine was caught out under the VSC, completely wiped out again. Hopefully he does manage to have a clean run to the end of the race, and hopefully it doesn't interfere with other drivers. But yeah, it's not good, I have to be honest. He does re-emerge. It looks fine for the time being, but to be honest, Ghost, I wouldn't be at all surprised if we see him jump out the lobby again, because he is not well, we've seen for the entirety of the last 10 minutes his car, when he's been on the track, has been jumping everywhere and just not raceable at all.
Yeah, and there is a bug in this game that if you disconnect from a session, sometimes it will just DNF your car. So if he does jump out the session again, he is at risk of that happening, and there's no recovering from that. So yeah, there's a big risk for PLX here, for both himself and for other drivers, like Daka says. So hopefully it will be all fine from here on out, but he has looked awfully unstable in this race so far. Zviadek into the pits meanwhile, for the mediums to the end. That's quite an early stop for the hards, I think. So he's taking those mediums quite a long way. Mateusz, obviously he's going to go for a two-stop. Well, I say obviously, who knows? Surely, probably going to go for a two-stop. Same for Gippo in the Haas, but yeah, Sieb and Mattia Manga at the moment in a comfortable position, but when they pit, it's going to be how far behind Nico are they going to be. I think they're going to be quite some distance behind. The bigger question, in my opinion, is are they going to be behind Hajjaj and PLX, who are currently right together on track, and PLX is looking for moves. So he knows Hajjaj has a penalty, and he'll be hoping to profit off that. He is still only 8 points behind in this championship, but without these connection issues, goodness me, he could have really eaten into that gap. But today, I think he's just going to be looking for a few points at best.
At the moment, well, we'll see, of course, when these guys come out. I do think they will...
He's going for it.
Oh, is he sending it already? Going to the outside towards turn number 14. Gets the move done long before they even get into the corner. PLX reclaims that 8th position on the road from Zinedine Hajjaj. Hajjaj back on that overtake button with that slipstream. He's not going to pull a move though, surely. Heading into turn number 16, he tucks in for the time being. At the moment, I imagine that it's going to be a fairly cordial swaps of positions though, unless they do decide to actually get into it. Of course, they come through towards the end of lap 16 themselves at 3 seconds adrift from EV Mateusz up ahead, who already seems to be struggling immensely on those medium tyres. I don't see how there's any way they are going to be going to the end of the race, or at least to the end of the race in any competitive situation. The Mercedes driver navigating turn 5, trying to close up towards NLR Felix 1 just in front, 3.6 seconds up the road. It's rare that we have such a dominant leader in these races. Well, he's not leading at the moment on track, but he's so far in front in terms of net possession now. OVR Nico now closing on the hard starters, dare I say, if there's no misfortune or untoward events. Of course, this is Singapore. It's been a fairly calm race up to this point, but you never know what can happen in the closing stages. He seems so clear of everyone else. Of course, he has benefited from the VSC and, of course, PLX's connection issues. He has had, nevertheless, incredible pace. He now closes up to the back of NASCAR. Could be a little bit frustrated behind the Alpine as he's caught him on a rather inconvenient part of the track, or has he? As NASCAR seems rather suspiciously easy at that move from Nico, but he does get through nevertheless into 4th possession, and a very worthwhile move. And as up in front, Lars van der Linden comes into the pit lane, but OVR Nico, it can only be misfortune or a mistake that gets in his way now in this Grand Prix. He is so far out in front and looking so dominant out there as we approach the final third.
Yeah, I was saying before this race that he can definitely count himself very unlucky to not be closer in this championship. It doesn't deserve to be 22 points behind the championship lead, I don't think, this season at this late on. But this could be the break he needs. If he can get this race win and Zinedine Hajjaj finishes behind PLX and even behind any other cars with that 3-second penalty to his name, then there's a lot of potential here for Nico to slash that gap apart. I think, well, 16 points for winning the race, and let's say Zinedine Hajjaj finishes 4th in this race, let's just say. That's 6 points immediately taken out of it. With 2 rounds to go, it'd be 16 points. It's still a long way to go, but he will be feeling a little more hope if he can slash that gap that far down. I've just been riding on board with Zinedine Hajjaj. He makes a big mistake through the turn 13 hairpin just as I say that, and loses a few tenths to PLX. He's now just barely in DRS range, and PLX will have seen that. He might be using, he uses overtake button out of turn 14, and he's trying to gap the championship leader now. Sieb with a 10-second penalty for speeding in the pit lane. So unnecessary as PLX locks the rears there into the last chicane. And I've got to say, Dak, I've been riding on board with Zinedine Hajjaj the last few laps. Both these two drivers look absolutely ragged on the limit. Both of them are making mistakes over and over at so many corners, locking the rears and just losing the rears on corner exits. So PLX and Hajjaj really either struggling or just pushing so hard in this race at the moment. Mattia Manga and Sieb come out 7 and nearly 8 seconds behind Zinedine Hajjaj though, but those medium tyres are of course going to be very strong for the next few laps compared to those old hards. But we saw in the first stint how quickly they drop off. So is this the correct strategy? We'll have to wait and see.
So that gap, we'll see how it will obviously it will be slashed in the next couple of laps, all things going normally, but that penalty for IRT Sieb will be a major blow to his chances, and also a major relief to both PLX and Zinedine Hajjaj. That is their leading threat in terms of on track, who's had a major hammer blow to his chances of actually getting in front of them in the final standings. Mattia Manga, on the other hand, is certainly in with a shout if he can try and match Sieb, who's come out the box flying on this outlap. Mattia Manga clawing his way back now with DRS. Geppo is in front, and we'll see if he's going to be a bit of a rear gunner role for his teammate now, as his mediums begin to struggle. To the same age as Mateusz. He's also attempting this long medium stint. Mateusz has decided not to pit just yet. He's getting towards what I would call the optimal pit lap to get off of this strategy, and or off of these medium sets and go for another pit stop onto mediums at the end of the race. But he's continuing to extend for now, and now PLX and Zinedine Hajjaj. This could be a very intriguing situation, and PLX, can he slip his way past, maybe get a car between himself and Zinedine Hajjaj, because Hajjaj is nowhere near as close. So PLX picks up the slipstream, goes to the left hand side, and he's going to cruise past Mateusz and take away third position on the road. And now he does have a car in between himself and Zinedine, who through this technical tight middle section will not have the overtaking opportunities. Through turn 9, he's nowhere near close enough. He's going to have to wait all the way through as they head towards the Anderson Bridge. Of course, it's possible Mateusz may be able to stay at that DRS range too. He has struggled for pace in the last few laps, but of course his tyres aren't going to be, well, they aren't any older, they aren't going to be significantly less grippy. Nevertheless, that is certainly a very critical and well-timed move for EVE PLX. Of course, he doesn't have too much pressure at the moment, as Zinedine does have a penalty, but that was a very, very nice move at a very, very nice time. And now Mateusz is going to be a major irritation to the championship leader now stacked up behind him.
Oh, Sieb and Gippo side by side as they head through the right-hander down to the straight. They nearly both put each other in the wall, but they just about get away with it as Mattia Manga also getting past Gippo on the outside, has to back out, goes for the switchback through the chicane, but there's no way through on the exit, and he has to stick behind. Sieb made his way past. Zinedine Hajjaj, meanwhile, gets past Mateusz into turn 1, and he's only, he's just under 1 second behind PLX as they come through. And he's not going to get DRS, so Mateusz might have him again here. Mattia Manga gets back past Gippo into turn 1. Suddenly, everything happened within the space of about 10 seconds, Saka. And Zinedine Hajjaj with no DRS. Here comes Mateusz on the inside for turn 7. There's contact as they head through, and Zinedine is sent wide. Mateusz all the way around the outside for turn 8. Surely backs out that one. He goes for the switchback, and he's going to have the outside line for turn 9. Hajjaj pushes him all the way off the circuit. Mateusz probably won't be too happy about that one, but Zinedine Hajjaj survives the onslaught nonetheless, but he is now 1.8 seconds behind PLX, and Sieb and Mattia Manga are closing in.
They are closing in rapidly, and that exchange was a godsend for PLX. He got held up behind NASCAR for a few of those corners, but immediately snatches it up with DRS. Heading into turn number 14, gets up into second place. Of course, a long way back from Nico, 8.2 seconds, but he's certainly on his way and resisting that comeback of the drivers behind. But look at how close they are beginning to go. You could see in the back of the shot there, Sieb and Mattia Manga. They are on their way, but do they have enough laps? Into the pit lane looks OVR NASCAR getting off of those hard tyres. There's yellows down the track. Sam Van Marsinger, I think he's just taken control of his car back underway as Sieb sets the fastest lap of the race. That will be certainly compounding the worries for the drivers in front. He's only just some 3.5 seconds or so, or 3 seconds rather, adrift of Zenedine in that third place, who now does not have that DRS assistance. He is going to be running ragged, pushing to the absolute limit, trying to reel PLX back in. If in nothing else, it's just a bit of assistance, a bit of a defence against the drivers behind. The penalty for Sieb certainly changes the race situation massively, but PLX has managed to get himself in clean air. It's been incredible comeback drivers. Hadjar runs into the wall again, but he does look to have just about gotten away with it. Oh,
yeah, that was turn 8 exit. He hits the wall again at turn 9. He is really on the ragged edge. Zinedine Hadjar 1.9 seconds behind PLX now. He is struggling, the Frenchman, but it's Sieb's 10-second penalty is going to be a godsend to him. At this stage in the race, Sieb is not going to be able to deal with that. He's going to fall well back in the end, and Mattia Manga is not catching them anywhere near as quickly. He's 1.7 adrift of the Williams driver. He is still catching, but Zinedine Hadjar still in a decent position.
Oh, Lars into the wall! Lars into the wall at turn 14.
Oh.
He was trying round the outside of Geppo, and he was the next driver on the fresh mediums on the road. But on that move, I only caught the end of it, but that nevertheless is damage, major damage to that front left end plate, and Lars van der Linden, it may be so bad he may have to come into the pits again. You can see the understeer, he slams the wall too, heading out of turn 17. He is going to try and endure with that damage, but I think the chances of a high points paying possession are going to be slipping away from him in rapid order. So gutting for Lars van der Linden, who looked like he may be on for a potential top 5 in this Grand Prix. Majorly gutting, but look at Sieb charging through, penalty or not, he is on the move. He goes to the inside of EV Mathieusz, runs a little bit too deep. Mathieusz trying to fight it back to the outside of turn 8, but surely he does not have the grip, and he doesn't. Sliding all over the road is the Polish driver, and Sieb up another position. He will be ruining that penalty even more, because there's a real chance, a real opportunity of a potential P2 here, and well, if there wasn't the VSC, he could have been a challenger for the Grand Prix victory. But now Sieb, he's going to have to get on with what he has. The gaps are big in this race, so he can still salvage a very respectable haul of points. He's got a full battery to use too against Zinedine Hadjar, who I can't imagine is going to be able to put up much resistance. He understeers through turn 14 as Lars is out of the race entirely. A full safety car comes out, and that is going to change the complexion. Everyone is going to have to dive into the pit lane, surely, or certainly those that are on the old hard tyres. Nico comes in, and we said, well, that the fortunes of this race could very much change, and that OVR Nico, who looked to be on for an incredibly dominant victory, it all changes. Even the drivers on the fresh medium, Sieb and Mattia Manga, are heading into the pit lane. So race neutralised, penalties will be so much more important. But EVE PLX, he's put old tyres on. EVE PLX put old mediums on. I said this would put him right in the mix, but that looks like a gutting mistake. I don't know if he had a fresh set or not, but EVE PLX, I was just about to say how fortunate he was with this full safety car. Now it's put him right back into the fight, but that could be so disastrous. Those tyres will have no grip relative to the rest.
Yeah, absolutely. And EVE Mathieusz now right back in this race as well. NASCAR up to P5 as well on those 2-lap old mediums, but he has a penalty to his name. Who was it that had the 10 seconds? It was Sieb, so he's now down to P8 after serving that penalty. And he'll have to fight his way back up, so he'll be frustrated. But Nico will be particularly frustrated with this safety car. He had a very comfortable gap, and he was cruising to this race victory, but not anymore. Although PLX being on old tyres, Nico won't know this unless someone is in his ear telling him that PLX is on those older tyres. So Nico's going to be thinking, well, I've got to defend from the PSF4 champion now, but no, it's 10 lap old mediums. There's surely no way PLX is going to be able to deal with the VCARB driver, and Zinedine Hajjaj in a great position as well, but the safety car's also bad for him because the championship leader has those 3 seconds of penalties for track limits, and with the grid bunched up close together again, it could cost him even more. Although, like I said, he tends to excel with late safety car situations. He just tends to be the only one who doesn't get into a late incident, so we'll see if he can deliver on that front again. But EVE Mateusz, he was on a horrible strategy, and he was looking like he would have to pit again, or at least lose so much ground to the incredibly old mediums he would have had. Now this safety car brings him straight into the fight for the podium, and in fact he is on a net podium right now. So EVE Mateusz looking for a fantastic result. PLX is into the pits, and disqualified. Oh no, he's been disqualified. He came in, but I think
he went past Nico.
There, he went past Nico when he came in the pits. The game's disqualified him, and Zinedine Hajjaj now, it is just everything is coming up Zinedine Hajjaj right now. EVPLX, after disconnections all throughout this race and other just connectivity issues, he is now disqualified from the race. It's a shock turn of events in the Singapore Grand Prix, and once again, Dakar, you can never ever count anything from happening out at this circuit. Even a shock disqualification at the end, and Zinedine Hajjaj, what a position he's in now. I think he'll be mixed emotions. He'll be pleased to see his closest championship challenger get that bad luck, but there's got to be a part of him that's thinking, well, I didn't want it to happen like that.
Well, I think potentially, but I think most of all he's going to be relieved, because he certainly looked in jeopardy early in this race, but oh my goodness, my heart goes out to EVE PLX there. I can't believe it was an instant disqualification again. He probably went past Nico, well, maybe after the pit entry line, I'm not sure. Well, they see that his car came back out onto the track after the AI took control of him, so it must have registered as if he was still on the track as normal and not coming into the pit lane, and obviously registers as him going past OVR Nico. That's such a shame. Unbelievably unlucky, of course. You could say it was rooted in that mistake to put old medium tyres on, but EVE PLX, that is just, I have to say, just utter brutal bad luck, and it dramatically changes the championship picture.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I can think of is that he had a softer tyre allocation, because I can't think why it would have put him on old mediums again, but because I don't think that's a mistake that you can actually make in the cockpit. So it's strange one anyway. But Nico's off again. He's gone very early here. The safety car's into the pit lane. Hopefully he doesn't get a forced slowdown here. I think he's just about okay. Yeah, across the line, and they're good for lap 26. Just 6 laps to go in this Grand Prix, and it's OVR Nico who is in prime position to take a much-needed race victory. Zinedine Hajjaj desperately needs to mitigate that 3-second penalty he's got to his name. NASCAR has one as well, but at the moment, as it stands, he would drop a ton of positions, and Mateusz is looking to put him under pressure straight away, using that overtake button. He's got the slipstream. Does he send one to the inside? No, he backs out just in time. He had a look, but didn't dare brake late enough to go for it, and Zinedine Hajjaj keeping that P2 for now.
Nico.
But Nico, he's 8/10 clear. He has a bit of a hit at the wall at turn 9, but it doesn't matter. He is flying in this race, and he clearly adores this circuit.
He does make another slight error there in turn 11. He's certainly pushing to the absolute limits, but he is pushing Zinedine Hajjaj to his breaking point here. Look at this, the gap stretches 9/10 of a second. Zinedine as well has drained even more of the battery. He's working so hard, and defending from Mateusz earlier on certainly didn't help him much. Further back, Ruben tried to salvage his race. He's benefited from that safety car. He's gone on the soft tyres and gets through on his Videk. He does also have a 3-second time penalty to his name, but he is going to try and cover come back? Can he use the grip of the softs to get back in DRS range of the drivers in front? Up at the front of the race, Zinedine is barely hanging on by a thread. Nico, a 28-1 in the race, extraordinary speed, and he is gapping the rest of this PSF3 grid. You rarely see a driver just waltz away in this fashion. Singapore is a track that provides that opportunity, as Zvidek again disconnects. Guttingly disappointed for the Mercedes, who drops behind Felix, and I imagine he's not headed for points. So disappointing as Mateusz now getting a run on Zinedine Hajjaj. Pulls to the inside, it goes through into second position. Does the DRS try and catapult him towards Nico? We'll see if he has better relative pace. Zinedine seems to be struggling out there. Mateusz is going to try with all his might to hang on to Nico, but can anyone hang on to Nico? Because he is pushing all of these drivers to their limits out there. Again, I've never seen a driver on this game put so much pressure on from the front. It's extraordinary.
Yeah, he is just in a class of his own at the moment, but Mateusz is keeping up with him, and he's going to crucially have the DRS here down towards turn 14, and he's within 6/10, and he could well put some pressure here on the former runaway race leader, Zinedine Hajjaj, down in P3, and he's going to be under pressure from NASCAR, who is racing him. They have the same amount of penalties, so the Alpine driver will certainly want to get ahead, and Zinedine Hajjaj at the moment in a horrible position, because those 3 seconds of penalties are going to drop him so many positions. It'll probably drop him all the way down to P7 as it stands, and if NASCAR gets past, it'll be P8, so Hajjaj in a lot of trouble right now, even with PLX out of this race. Nico, if he can win this, will slash that gap all the way down to maybe even single digits from 22 before this race, although NASCAR's struggling to stay with the Haas driver now. He doesn't even have the DRS, so here comes Mattia Manga, who's going to look to catapult himself towards the top 3. He gets easily past the Alpine, and we've seen he's got good pace so far in this race, so can he unleash it now to bridge the gap to the top 3?
He's got a very crucial lap ahead of him. 1 second exactly is the gap as they head into turn number 9. Keep an eye on that. That could potentially keep the field together. Of course, for Zinedine, it's so crucial that he cannot come across, because he's dragging the majority of the field with him. And that 3 second time penalty could be looming very large, I imagine, in his brain as it stands. He seems to be regrouping in terms of pace. Mateusz working hard to try and put some semblance of pressure on OVR Nico, but I imagine it is going to have to wait, and he's going to hope that there's an opportunity right close to the flag. Nico has been the fastest driver undisputedly for the duration of this race. The question is, though, will he be denied in the closing laps by a charging Mercedes of EVE? Mateusz closing in behind. Mattia Manga's having a very, very good lap up to this point. He's had to use a lot of battery, but look, OVR NASCAR is really struggling out there. He cannot live at the moment with the speed of anyone running in front of him, and he's dropping out of DRS and Mattia too, so everyone who comes up behind him, it seems, is going to have to try and put a move on if they want to maximise their chances in this race. We're inside the final 3 laps here at Marina Bay. Mattia Manga is working his way back in. He's again pushing right to the limit through turn 5 over the curb and up towards the wall, but he is within that DRS of the race leaders, looking at a podium at this stage. Geppo will slide past NASCAR as well. Sieb will try and follow through on his comeback through. NASCAR breaks incredibly late in a turn 7 at Memorial Corner and holds it round the outside. There was sun contact, and Sieb will be immensely frustrated that he could not find his way through again. What could have been a potential challenge for a race win. At the moment, he's scrapping away for the points paying possessions behind OVR NASCAR. Geppo does get through, and now he's got work to do to get into DRS of the drivers in front. Mattia, though, looks very, very fast. The question is, though, can he put any threat towards those race leaders? At the moment, Mateusz and Nico look fairly safe at the front and look to be disputing this race win.
Here comes Sieb. He looks to the inside of NASCAR, but he doesn't have the bottle to send it into turn 14, and it's such a difficult decision to go for it into there, because you know just how easily it can go wrong. And well, into the last few corners, Sieb has to stay behind. He'll surely get through on the next lap, but how much time has he lost behind this Alpine now? NASCAR really struggling, but the DRS train continues all the way down to P9. Ruben on those soft tyres is holding on. He does have a penalty to his name though, so it's not going to matter in the end. But OVR Nico continues to lead this one. He's got far more in the battery as well than EVE Mateusz, so he's in a great position for these last 2 laps. Zinedine Hadjar's got almost nothing left, but Mattia Manga's too far behind to make a move and put Mateusz under any pressure, as Sieb finally does get that move done on NASCAR and moves into P6. But I think the only real driver he's going to be fighting with, maybe he can get Gippo on the last lap, but I think he's just going to make sure he stays within 3 seconds of Zinedine Hadjar at this point.
My goodness, further behind, OVR NASCAR massively spinning up the tyres, heading out of turn 8. He is certainly struggling more than virtually anyone on the road, now down into P7, sliding down the order, and with that penalty, of course, setting him back no end in this race. We are heading towards the final lap. Mateusz, he's certainly had to work immensely hard to stay with Nico and to close in. He's used much more battery, as you said, but he is within 0.3 of a second. He only needs one opportunity. Again, it would be phenomenal if OVR Nico were to lose this race after being so dominant, but he does have pressure from behind, and the man, of course, who came so close to victory last time out, in the first round of the season, in Bahrain, was also in the fixture last time out in Silverstone, of course. He is the highest placed driver in the standings without a win. Can he do it? At the moment it looks unlikely, because Nico had a great final sector and is half a second clear. The clearest cut overtaking opportunity is down in a turn 7, but Mateusz has no battery to use, and he is dropping further back as Nico now begins to deploy his overtake button. He swings over to the right hand side of the track, trying to break the draft any way he can, but he is 0.7 of a second clear at the moment. His raw speed just looks overwhelming in this lead fight. Further back, Spyros moves past NASCAR, and the penalty for Sieb could catapult him even further up the order then. So costly for Sieb. Again, a couple of errors have really set Pay to what was otherwise a phenomenal showing from him. We are inside the final half a lap, and OVR Nico is stretching away with a mistake potentially getting in the way. Other than that, it seems as though he cannot be touched. He is stretching away here at Singapore. OVR Nico again. The speed has just been out of this world tonight. He is more than 1 second clear now of EV Mateusz. When he decided to deploy the battery on the final lap, he has dropped the hammer, and he has dropped the rest of PSF3. This has been a drive, well, without equal, certainly here tonight. He has stormed clear of the rest of this field. He has put them to the sword all the way throughout this race, and after trials and tribulations after that race win in Spa, he now has a second for the season. OVR Nico wins from Mateusz Mattia Manga. Geppo takes 4th position amazingly in the end. Zinedine Hadjar will take a 5th place, which will elicit very mixed emotions, I imagine, for the championship leader. We'll run through the rest of the results in a second, but what can you say, Ghost? OVR Nico, from start to finish, you cannot deny how deserved that race win was. That was, I would say, in terms of raw speed, possibly the most dominant drive of this season.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. What a drive right when he needed it as well, with this championship, with him being so far behind in the championship with so few rounds to go. He desperately needed to profit off of a bad result for the other two contenders and get the race win, and he absolutely delivered. What a storied drive from Nico, and he gets the fastest lap as well, so the extra point there, as Zinedine Hadjar will have gotten the extra point for pole 2, but that is going to mean with Zinedine in P5, I believe that Nico has just gained 10 points on him. With 2 rounds to go. That will leave the gap at 12 points with those couple of rounds to go. That is much more surmountable. That sounds a lot better than 16. So he is put himself in a much better spot, Nico. And what a drive it was. What a deserving race win. And he was just the class of the field today, like you said so many times, Dake. He just did not relent. No one else was anywhere near him today.
Yeah, and it says a win by 1.1 seconds, but the truth was a lot further from it. Of course, he was going to win by a frankly ridiculous margin by the standards of F1 24 without that late safety car. Of course, the late safety car completely defined the evening too of another championship contender, EVE PLX. Again, we just have to comment again on just how unlucky that man has been. First with the connection issues. Remember, he was actually with OVR Nico. He just managed to get himself into DRS at the beginning of that second stint. But yeah, just so frustrating and so disappointing. And I hope he can come back to keep this title fight alive. But his championship hopes have suffered a hammer blow here tonight. And OVR Nico, though, certainly bringing his way back in. Cleared up the top 5. It was, of course, Nico from Matios, then Mattia Manga, Geppo, and Zeredin Hajjaj in the top 5. Behind that was Spyros, Seb, OVR NASCAR, Felix, and Ruben rounding out the points finishers. Behind that, Zvideg, Napple, and that was the rest of the finishers actually. Then it was Lars van der Linden, Samban Marsing, Vessel, Nick, and PLX, of course, with that very, very unlucky disqualification as he tried to come into the pits. So yeah, that rounds off the result. And well, we've talked about the championship so much throughout tonight, but I don't think even we were expecting the situation to change so often between those 3 drivers up at the front.
No, absolutely not. And, well, I mean, Zinedine Hajjaj, you know, by all accounts, it was a subpar race for him. From a dominant pole position to finish in P5 with a 3-second penalty as well. It could have been P6 if Seb hadn't got one on the last lap. You know, by all accounts, that is not a great showing from him today. But he's extended his championship lead. He was 8 points clear, and now he's 12 points clear. So it's just a different person behind him now. So just no matter what, Zinedine Hajjaj just seems to have a stranglehold on that top spot. He's had it all season long. I don't think he's dropped out of P1 in the championship all season. So he's looked to be the champion-elect for a lot of this season, but there have been swings and roundabouts throughout. And, well, you know, if his championship lead extends after a race like this, it just you just have to wonder what it's going to take for him to lose that top spot. But with 2 rounds to go, oh God, it would be absolutely gutting for him to lead the championship for 8 out of 9 rounds and then lose it in the finale. But it's, you know, the way Nico is driving and the way PLX is driving as well. He may be 16 behind, but even he's not out of it yet. You can't bet against it.
No, I mean, there's not much that you can't bet against, of course. I think the number that we're looking for in this next round is going to be 18. That is the amount of points left on offer after the next race in Mexico. And yeah, we'll see whether Nico and PLX can keep the title fight alive heading into that final round, or even close in on Zinedine and give us a grandstand finish in the season, just like we had 2 seasons ago between Coleman, Fraser, and Finlay. We'll see if that does unfold once again. But yeah, I'm with you on that. Zinedine looked like he was all over the road tonight. He had great speed, clearly, but just couldn't bring it together and was sliding all over the road throughout the race. I think that man truly does have 9 lives, and he certainly proved that tonight with numerous brushes of the wall, but managing to get away relatively clean. It's very difficult to control the car in the race trim here at Singapore, but I think the same can be said of our next track, the Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez in Mexico. That is a track where, well, the characteristics are very different to this, but I can certainly speak from experience. The car can be very on edge in race trim, especially if you don't get the setup right. So we'll keep an eye on that, but I think that yeah, these drivers are going to have to be wary. The Mexico's track isn't a track where you generally expect to see drivers dropping the car and crashing out of the race like we saw tonight, but it's certainly a track where you can struggle and slide, and your race pace can fall apart. So we'll see if that is how it unfolds, but I do think there is that jeopardy in the next track we're headed to.
Yeah, definitely. Things can definitely turn in Mexico as well. Track limits penalties are quite a big thing in Mexico, or they can be. Quite easy to get them through turns 1, 2, and 3, and there's a few other corners as well. But you know, could be some late dive bombs into the final sector on the last lap as well. That's something that Mexico is a little infamous for, perhaps in league racing. But at the same time, it's a great circuit. You know, you've got that long DRS straight, so most overtakes are pretty simple around there, but you can get some moments at that circuit. So yeah, we'll have to see who's on top when the pace comes around next week. But you know, this late into the season, qualifying is important as well. That extra point for pole could turn out to be a championship winning point. So you know, that's going to be on these drivers' minds as they head into these last 2 rounds, but it's still very much all to play for. And if Nico drives anywhere near as well as he drove today, next week in Mexico, we're going to have a very, very exciting finale.
We will, and yes, indeed, we're going to have to keep a very close eye on those pole position and fastest lap points in these last 2 rounds. Certainly, it's a much harder track to pull away from than Singapore, so it may be difficult to break the DRS so forcefully like he did tonight, but we'll see how Nico gets on. But yeah, as you said, it's a track where chaos can certainly ensue. Of course, we came here 2 seasons ago and we had the incident that we shall not speak more of in that race as well.
Oh, yes.
As I think Ghost has just recalled what incident I was referring to. Hopefully we don't see any of that in the race to come, but that is yeah, further down the line for us. 2 rounds to go in this, well, very short season. It has certainly flown by. It certainly feels like the race 1 in Bahrain was just yesterday, but that is 2 races left. Be sure not to miss any of them. But that is to come in PSF3. Again, just some thank you to PSGL for putting on a show. Thank you for GT Omega for sponsoring PSGL. Thank you to the drivers for putting on a wonderful show for us tonight. Thank you to Ghost, of course, for being alongside me. And thank you to all of you, one and all, for tuning in and watching what makes this worth doing certainly for us in the commentary box. So thank you all so much for tuning in, and be sure to tune in as well for the next round in Mexico. That is round 8 of the championship. Do not go anywhere. But I think for now, for myself and Ghost, it is goodbye for now, and until next time, we'll see you later.